Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Welcome to episode 179 of Sports Management Podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Hayley Perlus. She's a performance coach, professor, public speaker, consultant, and an author. Her book is called Podium, talking about mindset for success in sport and life. We spoke about unlocking peak performance, harnessing stress, mental discipline, fake it till you make it, how she nearly got kicked out of a Ph.D. program, and much more. Dr. Hayley Perlus, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you, Marcus. Happy to be here.
It's my great pleasure to have you on the show. You're a performance coach, consultant, public speaker, professor, author. You're wearing many hats. So can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, if there is something like a regular day for you?
Yeah, good question, because there isn't a regular day. I guess the consistency is the topic, which is performance psychology. And you either apply that on stage, speaking, in a book, writing content, working in my practice one-on-one with athletes, or also in the business world, as well as in the health and wellness.
Interesting. Yeah, I know that you're talking a lot about peak performance, and that can be achieved because people who listen, they might be doing sports or they might be in their professional setting at work. So how does someone unlock their peak performance? And also, you talk a lot about stress and how you can use that to your advantage. So if you want to talk about that a little bit.
You're going to jump right in, aren't you, Marcus?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's just do that. Let's just jump into stress. And, often people will say, and sometimes I catch myself saying, I wish I didn't have this stress in my life. But I think we're all lying to ourselves when we say that. Because all of the achievements that we've had, all of the goals that we set, all of the dreams that we go after, that's all stress. And the reason why we want to have those dreams, the reason why we want to improve our performance, the reason why we want to, have all of these accomplishments and realize our potential, because that's how we live a fulfilling life. And the only way, in fact, when we talk about flow state, which is one of the main concepts in sports psychology, when we talk about flow state, that's about embracing challenges. That's stress. But it's where we are our happiest, and it's where we are our most creative and innovative and collaborative. Problem is that we want the stressors that we choose, and we want to remove the stressors that we didn't choose. Well, life isn't fair. So we have to learn to expose ourselves to stress, especially the ones that we don't choose. And even though in sports we have offensive and defensive play, when it comes to stress, we want to make sure that we are equipped to be on offensive play so that we can expose ourselves to the stressors instead of letting them take us down.
So how do you equip yourself to handle this type of stressors in your life?
The greatest tip that I could give you right now would be for all of us, and I definitely do this for myself, for all of us to take a moment and just identify our top 3 strengths. And that may be technical or tactical. If you're an athlete, it may be something strategic. If you're a business person, it may be for me, what makes me my best self is I'm bright. I lead with my heart. And I'm a strength finder. So when we identify our top 3 strengths, no matter the stressor, no matter the challenge in front of you, I can always ask myself, okay, how can I bring just a little bit of my brightness to this stressor? How can I bring just a little bit of my heart to this challenge? How can I bring my strength finder to this stressor? And in professional, in all sports, the idea is not to go out onto the field or the arena or in the water on the mountains in the greatest competition of your life, the biggest stressor of your life, looking for all the ways you're not good enough. No, we go out there highlighting our strengths. So we should be doing this in every aspect of our life, every time we're dealing with a stressor. You go out there and you show off your strengths and you expose yourself to your stressor the best way you can.
Because everyone gets stressed, right? If you're doing like a professional athlete, they get stressed, or a speaker that will speak in front of a large group of people. So it's how you take that stress and make it into something positive, I guess, because you will never not have that stress in your life.
That's the idea. And I don't know, is it making everything positive? Is it turning every, I don't know that that's always possible. Marcus, I think that's a great concept and that would be wonderful. But one lesson that I learned from Novak Djokovic in an interview that I saw him, he kind of laughed off this concept of positive thinking 100% of the time because we're human and it's life. And sometimes things, if I can be so direct, simply suck. And we're allowed to be upset and frustrated and sad because we care about this thing. The trick is to bounce back. The trick is to quickly be sad and then recover, be frustrated and then recover, be angry and then recover. And how do we do that? Is we make the focus less about the stressor. We make the focus more about ourselves and what we can bring to this situation.
When you talk about stress, I mean, biologically, stress is something good, right? Because it triggers adrenaline and it makes us stronger and faster and smarter, maybe, I don't know. But the issue is when it becomes too much or you have chronic stress. But I mean, in its essence, stress is something good.
Absolutely. It's energy.
Yeah.
Now, and it's energy that we can use. And even if so there's a difference between some things we would think of anxiety, anger, fear, frustration, worry. A lot of the times that anxiety, long-term, as you said, long-term is that chronic is very dangerous. It can drain us of energy. It can allow us to see the world in an unrealistic, irrational, very negative way. So there's a lot of actual real consequences to that. But you're right. If we just dip our toe in anxiety, wow, that can be motivating. That can be invigorating. That can help us focus when we weren't able to before. I don't know about you, but sometimes I consider myself to be a procrastinator because if I have a presentation to deliver 30 days in advance, I don't know that I'm so motivated. But a week before, I start getting worried and that starts making me focus and get, and really put highest effort. But I don't want to live in anxiety. I want to use it to my advantage. And then I want to get out to something that's more of a perceived challenge instead of a threat.
Yeah, I think we all can relate to procrastinating in some way or another, specifically from the school times. It doesn't matter like how many weeks you had to do a project, you did it like a few days before.
Oh yeah, I like my sleep, but a couple of weeks before my dissertation, I was not sleeping because exactly.
For sure. So you have worked with a lot of elite athletes and business leaders. What type of similarities do you see between the high achievers from business and from sports?
What's the saying? Business is sport and sport is business. And it's interesting in business, everybody wants to, the way I deliver concepts, the way I teach, the way I share is always using sport analogies. And everyone loves that because it's fun to think of yourself as I didn't coin the term, actually, my mentors coined the term corporate athlete. It's actually fun to think of yourself as an athlete in business. And the concepts are the concepts: motivation, self-confidence, focus, and anxiety control. Those are the 4 skills we teach in performance psychology, in sports psychology. And the exact same skills are applicable to business and health and wellness. And in sports, especially, I think always, but especially now, again, with young athletes needing to have a brand and needing to be, with all the social media, they have to learn business strategies much younger, like at a very young age. And so the business, sport is business, business is sport. And I think the lessons are very transferable.
Yeah, that's a good point to bring up there. That starts earlier, and now in US with NIL, for example, and they start having these type of commercial deals early as well. So they need to think about their brand, their business, and also perform on the field, which could be a stressor, as we talked about before.
It absolutely is a stressor. And decisions. I was just listening, you and I were sharing, I was just listening to one of your episodes, the athlete brand. And, one of the feedback was to create your own website for these athletes and to create your own database instead of relying on social media. We didn't need to worry about that 10, 20 years ago. And so these are just added business facts or business strategies, business plans that young athletes have to worry about. And sometimes, they're 17, 16, 18, right? Exactly. So in addition to all of the, performance psychology tactics.
You have mentioned the concept of discernment focus, so the ability to distinguish what's essential from what's irrelevant. So, the more things that comes in with this type of things, that you have commercial, you have your training, you have your food, you have everything that's going around. How can someone have this focus and kind of pressing mute on the things that are not relevant?
Yeah. The first is we have to know what is relevant and what is irrelevant. We have to understand the concept and we have to be able to make choices. And I don't know why today is a tennis day, but I'm looking at Roger Federer, who gave a wonderful speech. I think it was Dartmouth, and I hope I got the university right that he just spoke to at his commencement speech. And he talked about, in the moment, the point is the most important thing. Nothing else is relevant. And after that point is played, it has no bearing anymore. It is irrelevant. Win or loss, it's irrelevant. And then what's relevant is the next point in front of you. And we have to understand this concept. In addition to that, he's playing that point, and what anyone says in the audience, any spectators, anything is irrelevant. So it's a really big lesson. And often the best way to learn that is to just sit down with a pen and paper and create any situation in your life and just make a list. Okay, in this type of situation, this is irrelevant and this is relevant. So we have to start learning. And then it's practicing. So even though you decide what's relevant and relevant, doesn't mean your mind is automatically going to be able to focus on that. Concentration is a muscle like any other. We have to practice. And I play games with my athletes to teach them how to focus on this one of the games. We could all go online and just search concentration grid, and it'll give you a grid of all these numbers scattered around from 0 to 99. And you time yourself and you see if you can just focus on finding 0, then 1, then 2, then 3. And you can play music. You can have friends distract you. You have your internal distractions if you think you're not going fast enough, and you practice your ability, the development of focus, by improving your concentration on the number that you're supposed to be focusing on. And then you transfer that concentration skill to that situation in your real life. So now not only have you decided what's relevant versus irrelevant, now you have the concentration muscle to go ahead and truly focus on only what's relevant.
Yeah, so it's first to map out what it is, and then to have the concentration ability to just narrow down on that specific thing.
Training. I think the biggest mistake we make is to think that, oh, I get that concept, and now suddenly you're just going to be able to live it. Sports psychology, performance psychology, any type of mental training is just that, training. And we need to put forth the effort.
It sounds very easy in theory a lot of times, but as you said, like, just to actually do it in practice, that's when the hard things start.
It's like any skill set. If you're trying to replace a bad habit in your sport, or a bad habit in your daily routines, if you're not currently playing sports, it takes a lot of repetition and a lot of frequency to replace a bad habit with a good one. Same thing here.
Do you have any, without maybe mentioning names or so, but do you have any, stories of athletes or business professionals that you have worked with, give some tangible example or something along these lines?
I have a story that I frequently tell, and it's just such a great example. And I think in today's world, it really helps us, especially now with social media, and we're always looking and comparing. and judging and being jealous or envy or all those things. I was once working with an athlete who was doing really well in practice, but couldn't perform. He would choke in competition. And it became very clear to us that he had a mental block, and it was intimidation. He was intimidated by three specific opponents. The interesting thing, though, is that those opponents were also his teammates. So they were there in practice when he was doing well, and they were there in competition when he was doing poorly. So the situation didn't change. The only thing that changed was his story. And in competition, it was all about what they're going to do to beat him. And so we worked very hard in choosing a story that he believed in, because I'm not a huge believer in faking it till you make it. So we actually chose a story that he could believe in and that he could rehearse, and that would help him. And that new story was, well, there's a script. Thank you, opponents, for showing up today. I want you to do your best, because if you show up motivated to do your best, that's going to motivate me to do my very best and beat you. And in competition, with high achievers, we don't want to be the best because everyone was their worst. We want to beat everyone when at their best game, because that means we were truly the best. And he agreed with that statement. So he had to really practice that statement. And it was just, thank you for showing up today. Thank you for showing up today. And 3 months after working together, he became the junior world champion. He didn't just beat his opponents. He actually beat everyone.
Positive affirmations can have so big part also that, or having that script. So is that something you work a lot about as well?
I do. I just have a caveat for myself. It's my opinion that I want all of us to find something that we truly believe in and then build on that. And it may be the smallest thing, but I'm not a big fan of looking in the mirror and telling yourself that you're something when you're clearly not. So I like to find something to believe in and make an affirmation of that, and then build it, and then let it grow and see what you're made of.
No, but I think that's really important, because if you say something that you don't believe in, then you don't believe it. So then it will not have a positive effect on you if you try to tell you something that you don't believe in.
I mean, have you heard, Marcus, fake it till you make it? Have you heard that saying?
Yeah.
I have too. And lately I've been trying to play around with it, and I just don't know if I just don't know about it. I'm playing around with it. I'm not completely dismissing it, but I tend to want to go with something that I do, that I don't need to fake. Right at the beginning, I can buy into it and build on it.
I think fake it till you make it works depending on what you do, but I don't think it works for yourself. But if you, for example, take this podcast, if I'm, throwing out there that it's the best ever and it's so and so, and other people might believe that, and then it gets hyped up by other people, and then you make it by faking it. But as long as it's something that you speak to yourself, then you already know the truth. So that's why I think it doesn't work on yourself, but it might work for other people.
Good point. I like it. If you build it, they will come, or,
yeah.
Good point. I hope you're telling everyone that it's the best podcast, and let all of us come to hear your episodes.
Yeah, I hope so too. So yes, I created this podcast. You have created many things, but one of them, you wrote a book as well, the Personal Podium. So do you want to talk about why you wrote that and what it's about?
Absolutely. I really pride myself on applying research. I pride myself on being the how girl. These are the concepts, and how can we all go about making them part of our daily lives. And so Personal Podium really does that. I dive into, again, my opinion, what I believe are the best imagery visualization techniques to use, my stance on goal setting, what I believe we can do with desire, belief, and focus. In addition to that, I'm a storyteller, and I love telling stories. And I've had the privilege of working with so many great athletes who have had success. And so in every chapter, there's also a story. Now, I've changed the sports and I've changed the names just to keep the confidentiality of the athletes that I work with. But these are stories based on a collection of truths and always using these stories to apply the concepts in the chapter.
Interesting. How can the listeners find this? Is it on Amazon, or what's the easiest way to buy the book?
Yeah, the best place is on Amazon. You can also go to my website, and there's a direct link right there, drhaleyperlus.com.
Perfect. I'm interested in your story and how you got into this line of work. I know that you used to ski, an alpine skier. So how did you get into sports in the first place? And when did you know that you wanted to be a sports psychologist?
Marcus, I was one of the lucky ones. I have a story, and it's a good one. I was 12 years old, and I was competing we have these 2 world championships for my age group every year, and this was one of the 2. And it was in Whistler, Canada, called the Whistler Cup. And it was the slalom event, and I was bib number 9, and bib number 8 is in the starting gate. It's a slalom event, as I said, so I have about 45 seconds until it's my turn to go. And my coach, not that I'm advising coaches to do this, but my coach pulled out $100 Canadian bill, placed it in front of my face, and told me that he had bet on me to win this race. So in this moment, if we're all listening, we're either thinking, how could a coach do that? What kind of pressure does that put on an athlete? Or maybe some of us are thinking, wow, if that coach believes so much in that athlete, maybe that athlete would take that in and believe in herself. My coach knew me enough to know that I most often thrive under pressure. And he was right. I remember thinking, wow, if my coach thinks so much of me and has those high expectations, doesn't that mean I'm doing something right? Isn't that cool? So I went down that race course. I did win, which was great. And my coach came down, kept all the money for himself. But he said to me, it's amazing what your performance can be when you get your head straight. And then very soon after that, he brought a sports psychologist to come and speak to my team. And that was it. I went home and I told my parents that I wanted to be a sports psych gal when I grew up. And here I am.
Amazing. And as you said, you're one of the lucky ones. You knew what you wanted early on, because I for sure didn't know what I wanted to do. And I think there are many people that struggle with that. So how great to know that at such an early age.
Yes, I do feel fortunate. It has been amazing. And in addition, there has been some little tweaks and twists. You know, I only thought that I would work with sports. And then as I was growing up and looking at my mentors and seeing what they're doing and see what I need as a human being living in this world, I very quickly realized that sports psychology is actually not just for sport athletes. We need these tools and techniques in business and in health. So I was able to have an open mind and expand, my career to all different avenues and industries.
Yeah. You have worked with some famous elite organizations like Rolls-Royce and some others. So how's that been like to be able to give your help to such well-known organizations?
So much fun and so many good stories. And one funny story, if I can share, was at NASA. I was coaching on behalf of the company. I was a facilitator on resilience, and at the end, one of the scientists, he said, thank you so much for this. These are real practical tools. Like, this isn't such a hard concept. And I said to her, I know, it's not rocket science. And it was just an interesting, it's just fun to play around, and it's fun to learn from so many interesting people while I'm teaching. And one of the coolest things is that I get to learn this each and every day by teaching it.
That's what I like about this podcast as well. When talking to people, you always learn something, right?
Oh, for sure. And then you hear yourself say something and you take a pause, like, oh, did I mean that? Oh, that I should probably look into that a little bit, or that was cool what I just said. So you learn a lot about yourself, Marcus, I'm sure.
100%. So yeah, from 12 years old, you want to do this, and then your educational path, you have been studying sports pedagogy, if that's how it's pronounced, coach behavior and sports and performance psychology.
That's right. Sports pedagogy, however you said it is perfectly fine. I knew what you were talking about. But yes, so I was into coaching. Once I finished competing, I then became a group fitness instructor, personal trainer, ski coach, water ski coach. So I've always been involved in sports and fitness my entire life.
And earning your PhD at age 28. And I read somewhere that you nearly got kicked out of the PhD program.
Yes. And it wasn't because I was a poor student. I had a 4.0 or I had straight A's. It wasn't that I was a poor student who wasn't getting good grades. This is an interesting business lesson that I had to learn. 2 years into my program, my advisor brought me in and told me that I might want to think about looking at another school because this was not a good fit. And what she was saying is that my career goals were more focused on practical application. And when you're doing your PhD, there's responsibility of research. And I didn't want to do as much research as my advisor wanted me to do. And so we had to work on a compromise and we had to figure out each other's needs and desires. And it did work out in the end. But I will tell you, talk about a stressor I did not choose in my life and one that I did not want to not want to have. But I learned about listening. I learned about communication. I developed those skills. I learned about compromise. I learned about a lot of business strategy, to be honest, when you're working with other people. And I also learned about how to overcome anxiety in my life that I didn't see coming. There was no warning. And I made it through. I had my own coaches and I made it through.
Yes, I know you have mentioned mentors and coaches. So how have you worked with that in your life? Have you had many mentors and that have helped you on different stages in your career?
Yes. So again, very, very lucky. I have one coach who's also my hero, and that's my father. So he has an amazing story on his own, his family, and then he has built his own business. And he, together with my mother, who taught me a lot about my passions as well. I had both of them really be a huge, not just an inspiration, helped me through my challenges with real strategy and tactics and support. I then have mentors. So when I knew that I wanted to become a sports psychologist, I started reading and exploring, and I found sports psychologists that I wanted nothing to do with. That I didn't like the way they practiced. It just didn't feel like me. And then I found two and then three specific people in sports psychology and peak performance that are older than me. So they've definitely been there, done that. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to connect with all of them, and they are still my mentors and I can ask them questions. And that's huge. And then also today I have an advisor for my own business. I have a coach to help me see what I can't see for myself. Super important. We all need people. It doesn't mean you're not doing a good job. It just helps me know what I don't know.
Exactly. And it's so important to have that because many times you don't know what you don't know. But if someone might, point that out and then you can work on that.
Absolutely. No, for sure. And even today, I don't teach at the university anymore, but I taught at the university for 9 years. And first of all, it was one of my favorite experiences when an athlete would come to me, because often I had athletes in my classes, but they'd come to me and they'd ask me, how do I become a sports psychologist? How do I, and not only am I thrilled because I take that as a pat on the back for doing a good job exposing everyone to the field of sports psychology, but I want to offer my support to them. And people ask me all the time, can I pick your brain? Can I ask you questions? And I have never said no. I'm always happy to help. And law of reciprocity, right? You give, you get, and pay it forward, and it makes the world go round.
That's great. Is there some like up and coming sports psychologist that you are being a mentor to now?
Not one in particular, but I will say just this week, actually the last 2 weeks, people who know me, a family friend, someone that I'm working on a project to help athletes beyond the sport. They both have sent me emails connecting me to some people who are interested in sports psychology, but it's a little confusing because there was different. When I was in school, I remember clearly in my graduate program, there were 2 people doing sports psychology, and there was probably 20 sport management students. Now, I don't know that it would be like that. Now, I think there's I know there's many more people interested in sports psychology, but the career paths are different, and, what it is that you're interested, whether you're interested in academics or practical. So I'm happy to help any way I can.
That's great. In your career, has there been any bumps on the road? And if so, how did you overcome them?
Many bumps in the road. Right when I shared the story about almost getting asked to leave my PhD program, many bumps in the road. I've had what I consider to be my own failures. Now, it doesn't mean everyone would consider them to be that they would consider it to be a failure. But I've had, athletes who they really wanted to achieve a certain goal and they didn't get there. One particular athlete who is so near and dear to my heart, his body just didn't let him get there. Just the numerous injuries, and and not that I'm living his life with him or for him, but these are things where I inevitably question, could I have helped a different way, or could I have? And so the athletes that I work with, their failures are, again, I'm detached from them because it's their life and I have my life, but I internalize them and I go through them. So there's those types of failures that I have to, as I'm coaching them to recover, I'm kind of recovering with them. So that's one. In my own business, for sure, I've asked for jobs that I didn't get. I've, some athletes, not all, to be honest, but there have been athletes who said thank you, but no thank you. There are applications. When it came to being a teacher, a university professor, I called the school that did not have a sports psychology program and I asked for the job. When I first started speaking, I called the program and I asked to be a coach. I've always picked up the phone and asked for the job. And yes, there are yeses because I became a speaker and a professor, but there were a whole lot of no's too. And they're all big. They're all big in the moment. But now you're asking me the question and I'm sitting here having, in my journey, this far along my journey, which I have a lot further to go. I know that I've had a lot of bumps and I know that I'm going to have a lot of bumps. And will they be happy? Will they be okay in the moment? Probably not. I'll be sad and frustrated. Do I know that I can get through them? Yes. And so that's the attitude that we all have to embrace.
Yeah. Every no is a step closer to a yes. But that's easy to think after the fact because, as you said, like now you have those things. But when you are in that moment, I understand that that's really tough.
Tough. Just yesterday, something happened to me. It was more of a personal thing, but I was let down. My feelings were hurt and I was getting cynical, and I don't like to be cynical. So I had like frustration on top of frustration. And I know that I just kind of let myself be. I get quiet in those moments. And then I woke up this morning and I felt better. And so it's just all of these moments. But, when people come to me and they say, help me, Haley, I'm angry, I'm sad. Good. If you're angry and sad, it means you care. If you're not angry about a failure, if you're not sad about a lost opportunity, it means you didn't really care in the first place.
Now you say good. It's a video with I don't know if you're aware of Jocko Willink. He's I know. Yeah, he has a video that says good. Whatever bad thing that happens to him, he says good. And then like that, because there is always something good in everything, like he can take from that experience because it makes you stronger or it makes you, reevaluate something. So just got me thinking about that.
I like it. I'm going to go look it up.
Yeah, do that. The first part that you mentioned there was really interesting. Also that you said that, when your athletes don't perform, maybe you take that on you as your failure as well. And in many jobs, you say that you shouldn't bring your work home with you. I guess in your line of work, that's a bit more difficult because it's so emotional and you're getting so close to your athletes or the people that you're working with.
Yeah. It's a good concept, and I do understand the concept. I really do. And but I think it's okay for me to just stop and take a moment and reflect and evaluate. Because if there is something that I can learn from it, well, I want to learn from it. And if I did everything that I could do, then I'm going to continue to be there for that athlete, but I'm not going to take it on as my own. And I have to have discernment to know the difference. I have to know whether, it was something that I can be better the next time and I can learn for the next athlete or for this athlete's next opportunity. Or if life is unfair, in sport, you lose more than you win. But I think it's okay for just to take that moment. Now, if I sulk and if I totally bring it into my personal life and I totally let it, like a domino effect, overgeneralize, I'm not doing myself any service. But I think it's okay in the moment to just have a quick evaluation. In addition to that, one of the reasons I don't just believe, I know, because these are the testimonials and these are what my athletes, the people that I work with, tell me, is that I'm not a one size fits all type of practitioner. I do care. I do listen, um and I don't necessarily need them to see me crying over their loss, but I think they know that I care, and I think that's okay for them to know that I care.
What's the best advice you have given or received?
Good. In all honesty, though, I do believe that is such a really valid lesson. When people come to me upset, to give them the space and freedom and permission to be upset, it means they care. It means actually it's a sign of confidence because they believed they could do better. So there is confidence in that. They made a mistake, so we have to figure out where is the gap, but that's a sign of confidence. They're motivated and they have desire. So that's good. But we don't want to linger there. But that's one of the important lessons I think that I can help others learn. What's one of the greatest what's one of the greatest lessons I've learned? Well, it's interesting. I now teach a lot about resilience in the business world. And I think people think resilience is just, it's okay to be upset and be vulnerable with each other. And I agree. But it doesn't just stop there. That's not resilience. The resilience is the bounce back, but the bounce back with real intention to grow and real intention to not let myself off the hook. You can give yourself grace, but never let yourself off the hook. Do you understand the difference? And I think that is one of the things I learned for myself. Life's not about being perfect. We strive for it, but we can't demand it. Things happen, and I can give myself grace, but never let myself off the hook. Something will always be better than nothing. And when I fall down, get back up, even if it's getting up an inch, just get up just a little bit and make a move forward.
Yeah, I like that. It's the Rocky Balboa one, right? That is not how many times you get knocked down, it's how many times you get back up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And sometimes it's not standing right up. Sometimes it's just, that maybe you just, I don't know, push down with one hand before you stand right back up. But yes, absolutely.
Is there something I haven't asked you yet that you feel is important to mention?
I don't know, Marcus, you're pretty good at what you do. This may actually
This is
be
the best podcast in the world. Yes, so that's right.
No, nothing that I can think of. I'm happy to answer any more questions that you have, but nothing at this moment.
How can the listeners reach out to you if they want to learn more? You mentioned a website. I know also you have your YouTube channel. So how can they get more of you?
Yes, I'm around, but I'm going to listen to the athlete brand. And I do anyways. The best place to get me is my website, and I'll tell you why. At drhaleyperlus.com, you can opt in for weekly mental toughness moments. So I do these 3-minute, 5-minute videos. But in addition, if you have any questions for me, when you opt in and you send a message, I'm the person that gets those messages. So if anyone wants to ask me a question, and I do respond. So best place is my website.
Perfect. The last question that I like to ask is a networking question, and it's who from your network do you think would be a good guest on this podcast?
Well, there is a sports agent who focuses on young athletes. I don't know if this is something that would interest the Sports Management podcast.
For sure.
His name is Loïc Martin. He's a sport agent in France, and I've only just met him, and he is so super, super passionate about the athletes that he works with. And he does work with young athletes too, which is really important for these young athletes to have someone that they can trust, be cared for, count on. Maybe he has some interesting stories to share.
Definitely. That sounds really interesting. Dr. Haley Perlus, thank you so much for taking the time to be on Sports Management Podcast.
Very happy to be here, Marcus. Anytime. And thank you for including sports psychology in your sport management podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management Podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportsmpodcast.